Morning, guys. It's Louis again. I'm just here in the morning with my little 3-year-old boy, and he's just sat quietly behind me on his phone and got the dogs with me as well. So it's quite a touchy subject of this live video, and I know that you guys, if I do anything negative about Elvis, I get lots of messages saying, you're not a true fan, this is not fair. Why are you doing videos like this? Now, I just want you guys to know that I am a true fan and I love Elvis. And as you guys know, Elvis transformed my life from when I was a very small child. And I feel indebted to Elvis. And I don't want to trash Elvis, but I want my channel to be very fair and open-minded to everything that happens to Elvis in his life, good or bad, negative or positive. And because I want to try and understand myself why things happened, why certain things in his life went wrong. And how can I say it? I find it, I don't know what the right word is, almost confusing, trying to understand why did Elvis, right from the 50s, go down the road of taking prescribed medication. And I try to get inside Elvis's head, and because obviously he had everything going for him. He was very young, obviously a beautiful, talented man. Then you've got his upbringing in Mississippi, Tupelo. And I'm like, well, how did it begin? What was the first reason that Elvis took a pill? Yeah. And maybe not even knowing that it was a drug or it was a medication. What was the first thing? And after doing my research, I've learned in the 1950s, people did take recreational pills to party. And I've seen a few little write-ups that Elvis, this is before fame, may have took pills. Some people called them diet pills back in the 50s, but they would give you a little buzz and up, a high. So people might, in England, I think they might have called them blues, yeah? And I think, because many say that he started his pill taking in the army in 1958 to get through these maneuvers, because obviously they were all-night maneuvers. I think it might have started a bit before the army. It wasn't uncommon to take a party pill in the 50s. You guys, as my subscribers and as Elvis fans, and if any of you were around in the 50s, I know many of you were. Many of you out there are in your 60s and 70s that are on my channel. Do you have any memories of the type of things that were going on with the teenagers in the 50s? Obviously, you've got the sort of Marlon Brando, James Dean type films that were coming out, which, being cool and what was associated with being cool. And I think taking certain tablets to party was pretty well known in the 50s. So there's that. Now, so then I start going, well, what else would have made Elvis think about taking any tablet? Now, it's very well known that Elvis had a serious problem with insomnia, to the point where it was, where it actually made him unwell. Now, the other thing that I've learned is that Elvis had a paranoia that he thought he may never wake up again. Could you imagine how that feels? So taking a tablet to go to sleep. Don't forget, Elvis wouldn't have thought that these tablets are bad for him. And then the next problem is waking up after taking these tablets to sleep. You would wake up and you've got no energy and you're all lethargic and half asleep. So Elvis felt that he needed something to wake him up so he could do his job, especially when he became an entertainer. He wanted to be up so he could perform. So Elvis, I don't think, thought there was anything wrong with his pill taking. I think they were helping him go to sleep. They were helping him wake up. They were helping him go on stage and perform, and later in life to be fully alert for when they were making the movies. So I actually think that Elvis taking prescribed medication was actually very innocent. And there's a possibility actually that Elvis even took tablets to lose weight. Yeah, obviously before a concert or before making or a movie. And so it was all very innocent, him taking these tablets. Now, Elvis wasn't stupid. So as this problem started to unfold and become more serious, I'm still talking in the late 50s and the 60s. Elvis wanted to know everything about these tablets because Elvis always thought that because the tablets were prescribed medication, that that it was okay. They're not street drugs. Let me just click it on live chat in case anyone wants to comment. If any of you want to comment, guys, please go ahead. So, you know, he became very well read. He really understood each pill he was taking. And I personally feel he excused each pill. Elvis had a reason in his mind that to make the different tablets okay. Oh, I've looked it up. I understand it. It was given to me by a doctor. I'm doing nothing wrong. It's not a street drug. I'm doing nothing wrong. And Elvis always made it very clear that he was against street drugs. And he was against street drugs. And it's well known that when the Beatles became massive in America, and I'm a real big Beatles fan, and I'd actually like to make some videos on the Beatles soon. My point is that when the Beatles became massive, an overnight sensation in America, and many of you on my prescribers will remember the Beatles, there was a feeling that the Beatles were encouraging drug taking, and Elvis felt that the Beatles were a bad influence on America's teenagers. But this is later in Elvis's career. I think in the 70s, I think Elvis he was very anti-drugs, anti-street drugs. And we know about it when he went to meet President Nixon, and the whole point was to say that he felt that the youth of the 70s were being badly influenced and their drug taking. And unfortunately, it is rumored and maybe fact that Elvis did try and blame part of this on the Beatles. Now, if you think I'm wrong about this, please comment, because I don't know. Now, remember, I'm a Beatles fan. I love the Beatles. So I'm not trying to dish the Beatles at all. So the problem then became more deep, because once Elvis had convinced himself that prescribed medication prescribed by a doctor was okay and was legal, I think that then gave him the green light to go, do you know what? If I have any pill that is prescribed by a doctor, I'm doing nothing wrong, and I probably won't even harm myself. And I also think that Elvis actually convinced himself in the 60s and early 70s that the pills weren't doing him any harm. So then we move on to all the different illnesses that Elvis had. Now, we know he had a twisted colon. They say he had breathing difficulties, obviously heart problems, glaucoma. They say that because Gladys's parents were first cousins, that caused health problems as well. And Elvis had become a very unwell man in the mid-70s. And he had gone to hospital many times it's well known that Linda Thompson would stay with him in hospital. He was a very unwell man. So there we go. He's also taking a lot of medication that he actually did need to try and help all these different ailments in his body. And many of them were for pain. Now, if any of you out there have took a lot of painkillers, you know that if you take too many painkillers, you get a high, you get a buzz, and they're very addictive. And there is a side effect to these tablets. So it's a very complex web that Elvis got into, because yes, he was addicted, and yes, they probably were giving him a high and making him feel like he was floating, but they were doing serious harm. And yes, he needed painkillers, and yes, insomnia was a serious problem for Elvis, and even waking up and feeling alert and energetic was a problem for Elvis, because he needed to have that energy, that up, when he performed. So in the end, I think everything just got so complicated that I do think that Elvis convinced himself it was okay. And it doesn't matter who tried to help Elvis. It could have been Linda Thompson when she first met him, Ginger Alden. It could have been the Memphis Mafia. It could have been Priscilla Presley. Elvis, if anybody mentioned any kind of medication that he was taking, all pills, and the horrible word drugs, he would get defensive and angry. So in the end, people were too scared to bring up the tablets to Elvis. And I think even Vernon himself was too scared to mention these tablets. The Colonel Tom Parker tried, but Elvis wasn't having none of it. I think the only person that Elvis would have ever listened to when it comes to the pills was his mother, Gladys, and she wasn't around. So I'm just going to get my phone and I'm just going to look up a few things on here, and just to get a feel for the types of pills that Elvis was taking. It's very well known. You've even got people that actually had the actual pill tablet, the little container with his name written on it. And I'll show you those in a minute. So I've just typed in, Elvis did have problems with his health and he needed the pills to get him through the day. Hi, David Rickson. Yes. He did have serious problems with his health, very serious. And many people have told me all about the different illnesses. And there's that book. I'm trying to remember the name of the book. It's a female writer, and she in detail explains that because his grandparents on Gladys's side were first cousins, that this created many, many health problems for Elvis. So I'm just looking at here, and good morning, David. I wonder where you're from. The name's Louis. I'm in Southwest UK. So the reason given for his death was cardiac arrhythmia, suspected to be due to an interaction of an antihistamine, codeine, Demerol, which is a painkiller, it says on here, as well as Valium and several other tranquilizers. Prescription drug use sometimes resulted in fatal reactions. So I'm just I'm learning as I go here, guys. I'm just seeing what it's saying. Right. So while Elvis is best known for his musical and acting performance, there is much to be learned from the nature of his death, as well as despite an apparent belief that he was not a drug abuser, drug use played an unfortunate role in the unraveling of his career, and ultimately the death from the cocktail of drugs in his system at the time, the death of the actions of his physician in the last few months of his life. Elvis's death informs many relatives of modern addiction. Now we know about Dr. Nick, there's a massive story there, and it's so obvious that he overprescribed Elvis many times and got himself in trouble. So in Preston Lancs, just on my way on a work break, Preston Lancs, is that America? I should know. Just on my I wonder what you do for work, David. Let me know. So I'm semi-retired, so I'm home a lot. I've got 6 kids, so I'm quite a bit of a house dad. And if I have a quiet moment, I do try and quickly do a live video. So let's have a look. On August the 16th, 1977, Elvis Presley was found dead on the bathroom floor in Memphis, Tennessee. And despite his physician's insistence that the assertions of the original medical examiner that drugs played no role in his death, later examination revealed that this was absolutely not the case. Through his toxic reports, medical examiner found that he actually had traces of 14 drugs in his system, 10 of which were present in significant quantities. Now, one of the interviews I watched was that, when Elvis Presley did this live by satellite around the world concert, which I actually remember as a very young boy when I was about 9 years old, that he had slimmed out and got himself better and healthier and lost a lot of weight, and he was on a special diet to get himself to look great. And what the Memphis Mafia said in an interview is the minute that concert finished, Elvis went on a steep slope of taking lots of medication and putting himself to sleep for long periods of time. So after that concert, he really did become very unwell and very overweight, and was putting himself to sleep for long periods of time, sometimes days, and also just locking himself away in his bedroom at Gracelands for long periods of time after that concert. This is just one of the interviews. All right, you're near Blackpool. You're a baker. So you must know Weston-super-Mare. I think we may have spoke before, David, have we? But I'm in Weston-super-Mare, and my businesses used to be on the seafront of Weston, opposite the pier, the Grand Pier. So I've had a life of working on the seaside with day trippers and people on holiday in Weston-super-Mare. So right. And yesterday in Weston, the weather was perfect, so the seaside was packed. Anyway, right, so they're just listing some tablets here. Now, I know that you guys got very strong views on Dr. Nick. Many of you fans blame him for oversubscribing, and we know that Dr. Nick eventually worked for Elvis, and there were money wranglings, because I know Elvis would loan money to Dr. Nick, and Dr. Nick would go on holidays and outings with Elvis, and Dr. Nick wasn't just prescribing medication to Elvis. He was prescribing medication to all of the Memphis Mafia and friends and family, and many of the Memphis Mafia also were addicted, and Priscilla has admitted that very early on, Elvis sometimes would give her tablets, and I personally think, yes, Dr. Nick made it easy for Elvis to get these tablets, but was it Dr. Nick's fault? No, I can't say that. Dr. Nick definitely was naughty and broke the rules and should not have prescribed medication the way he did. But it's well known that Elvis was going to get these pills and no one was going to stop him. And he had other people collecting the pills for him, prescribing the pills for him. There was money changing hands as well. So no one was going. Once Elvis was hooked, no one was stopping Elvis from taking these tablets. So he was on codeine, which is a very strong pain medication, but we know that it will give you a high. Morphine, a form of opiate, again very addictive. Methaqualone, a barbiturate, which is a sedative, a hypnotic medication that is more commonly known by the brand's name Quaalude. There is a central nervous system depressant, was popular for the recreational use in the 1970s and 80s. So then we got diazepam, which better known as Valium or benzodiazepine, commonly known used for conditions like anxiety and insomnia. And we know Elvis had a strong problem, a strong case of anxiety and insomnia. So you break these down, these pills. I'm just going to go through them, then I'll just comment on them. So we got desmethyldiazepam, commonly referred to as nordazepam, benzodiazepine, I can't even say these words, ethinomat, another hypnotic drug, sedative medication, highly addictive. I can't even say the names. Placidil, popular in the 1990s for treating insomnia. So again, Elvis has got this thing about trying to get to sleep. And it must have drove Elvis mad not being able to fall asleep. And he would even take lots of tablets and still not be able to get to sleep. Obviously, a real risk of overdosing here. We've got pentobarbital, can cause sedative side effects. Then we've got phenobarbital, is to treat anxiety and insomnia. And to me, I've always thought anxiety is serious overthinking to the point where you just can't stop your mind going round in circles and racing, and you can't get to sleep. So a high number of drugs found in Presley's system were either barbiturates or benzodiazepines. I can't even say these words. These kind of drugs are very addictive and should never be mixed. And he did mix these tablets. As demonstrated in his death, significant doses can result in depression of the nervous system to the point that suppressed breathing and heart rate can be fatal. Further, the amount of codeine found in his body alone was 30 times higher than the recommended doses. And we know that Elvis did have problems with breathing because you see him with his inhaler before concerts. And I'm not saying it was for the pills, but it's still something to ponder about. While it's not impossible to purchase these kind of medications illegally, especially for a celebrity with deep pockets, evidence indicates that Presley was offered many of these medications legally. And I know this. In retrospect, the role of drugs was obvious in Presley's death, despite his doctor's efforts to cover up the abuse and his odd stance as an anti-drugs advocate. Now, yes, I've even this with some of the Memphis Mafia's interviews. They did try and hide the pills that were in the bathroom that day. There was a bit of a cover-up. To this end, even the original autopsy listed a cardiac arrest as the cause of death. However, this was quickly refuted by the results of more thorough investigative, which highlighted the astounding cocktail of drugs he had consumed in the hours before he died. Now, I just want to say my views on Elvis's pill taking causing his death. Yes, I do think the pill taking was a massive cause of his death, but I also completely understand that Elvis was very unwell as well, had lots of medical problems. So it was a mixture of the pill taking, the fact he was very unwell, obviously the heart attack. So, but I will say this, if Elvis had not been on medication, would he have lived longer? Definitely, 100%. If Elvis had not started on that road of taking pills in the mid to late 50s, and if Elvis had never took any of these pills, do I think he would have lived longer? Yes, I definitely do think that, 100%. Because don't forget, from my point of view as a fan, if Elvis had not been addicted to all these pills, he wouldn't have become so unwell. Because a lot of the illnesses can also be caused by the side effects of taking these pills. And I know that some of these illnesses that Elvis had were inherent from his mother. I get that. I completely understand that. And he would have needed medication and painkillers to ease the problems he had. I know glaucoma was very painful. So I get it. Right. However, in 1977, the connections between safe medication provided by a doctor and the more dangerous street drugs were a little less obvious. And I believe that as well. I really believe that Elvis thought because it was prescribed by a doctor that it was okay. As much as many of the safeguards in place today to catch doctors running pill mills didn't exist at the time Presley's death. However, that doesn't mean that doctors weren't all well aware of the dangers of both overprescribing medication and mixing medications. Right now, they're going to talk about Dr. Nick here. So yeah, Dr. Nikopoulos, which I'm guessing is a Greek name or a Cyprus name, better known as Dr. Nick, was Presley's physician from 1970 to 1977. He began working with the Presleys to address saddle pain before getting caught up in prescribing an unnecessary large number of drugs. And I've done a video about Elvis when he got into his horses, because he bought Priscilla a horse in 1967, and that got his interest. And then Elvis bought many horses, and his favorite was the Rising Sun, and he refurbished the stables and called the stables the House of the Rising Sun. And then there was this big craze then where he was horse hunting to get the best horse for him. And he bought many of the Memphis Mafia and family and friends had horses. I think at one point he had as many as 18 horses. Am I right about that? It could have been more. And Elvis was very proud of his horses and loved this passion that he enjoyed and spent thousands of hours with his horses. And so yes, there was a problem with saddle sores, and Dr. Nick came along, I think because Elvis's doctor was away. So Dr. Nick stepped in, and then this struck up a friendship. We know that there was money involved here, and Elvis really did like Dr. Nick. They got on very well. And Dr. Nick is known as saying that he felt so close to Elvis as if they had grown up together as children. And they had that kind of closeness. And I think that's part of the reason why they holidayed together. So Dr. Nick, believe it or not, absolutely loved Elvis. He really did, as a brother. But, you know, I can't defend Dr. Nick's behavior. He should not have prescribed so many tablets to Elvis. And I know that Dr. Nick would try and give Elvis placebos to try and reduce the amount of pill taking, but I think the damage was done by them. Let's have a look here. So Dr. Nick, right, his role in Presley's death is undeniable. In 1977 alone, Dr. Nick wrote him prescriptions for over 10,000 doses of narcotics, which, come on, it is madness, isn't it? That's like, you know, it's clear that these drugs weren't warranted, but were instead a way to placate Presley. As Dr. Nick put it himself, Presley felt that getting drugs from a doctor, he wasn't the common everyday junkie getting something off the street. Now, junkie's a horrible word, you know? I don't like to use that word, but Elvis was addicted, and he had put himself in danger of dying. He did. As much as we love Elvis, that is the truth. I won't use that word because I don't like it. Unfortunately, that's not how drugs work. Regardless of the source, addictive medication can be just as potent, whether they come from a doctor's pen or a dealer's hand. We don't want to hear it, guys, but it's the truth. In the 1980s, Dr. Nick was indicted of 14 counts of over-prescription drugs to Presley and other celebrities, including Jerry Lee Lewis. The jury failed to convict him based on the lack of evidence that his motives were malicious. Okay, there's a bit of information there. However, Dr. Nick was eventually stripped of his license in 1993, despite his insistence that he wasn't trying to hurt people, he just cared too much about them. That's not good enough, Dr. Nick. That's, I'm not trying to hurt people, I just cared too much of them. No, do your job properly. Don't overprescribe medication to the point where people are dying. So it's good that he was stripped of his license. And he went on to write a book as well. Unfortunately, all these people wanted to write books about Elvis, which I think is a bit of a letdown because Elvis wouldn't have liked it. We know that he was seriously affected by the Memphis Mafia writing the Tell-All book. So then years later, for Dr. Nick to also do it, Elvis wouldn't have liked that. And you said that you classed Elvis like your brother, like your friend. But then you write a book about him and you make an excuse that you're trying to write a book about him to clear his name. But ultimately, you did it for money. Too many people in Elvis's life did things for the money. And such a shame because a lot of these people Elvis would have thought were his genuine friends that he could trust. And even some of the Memphis Mafia, they let him down. They did. And I know the Memphis Mafia, if you listen to their interviews, clearly say that they did that book because they wanted to help Elvis get off the drugs. But if you read between the lines, they were still angry and bitter with Elvis for sacking them at such short notice and getting Vernon to phone them and give them the sack. There was bitterness there when they wrote that book. I do think they spent decades regretting writing that book. I really do. And I also think that once the anger subsides from the Memphis Mafia and they then remembered that they actually did deeply love Elvis, I think there was a lot of regret. And they remembered that they had amazing lives with Elvis. Elvis really, really did look after the Memphis Mafia, not just buying them homes and cars and giving them a wild life and women and, getting to meet amazing people and lots of traveling and, through all the movie making times they had together. And Elvis literally did everything with the Memphis Mafia and gave them amazing lives, and really looked after their families. And their thanks was to get angry once they lost their jobs and do a tell-all book, which they knew would devastate Elvis, And it's well known about the phone conversation that was recorded from Red West talking to Elvis, which I personally don't agree with, secretly recording a phone call. So Red West let himself down. And I like Red West. And we know the story where he walked into the toilets and the bullies at school were going to cut Elvis's hair, and Red West stepped in and stopped them. And that cemented a bond forever. And Red West and Elvis had decades together. And you've got that very old color footage of Red West and Elvis in one of his old pink Cadillacs. And what a shame that all these years later, Red West, all he can think about is writing this book that he knew would have devastated Elvis, and then trying to excuse it by saying they were trying to help him, which I don't think they were. I think there was money and bitterness. This is just my opinion as a fan. I could be wrong, guys. Give me your opinion. I want your opinion. So let's have a look here. Elvis Presley's story is tragic, but it's one of that you can learn from. By knowing what drugs Elvis did and understanding the role of illegitimate prescriptions, it is possible to better regulate the industry and see the signs of abuse. Well said. So, and if we just go to the pictures, because I know that there's one there. Can you see that? I don't know how well. I'll just hold it so you can see if it will focus and read it. But it's so this particular one, Dr. Elvis Presley. It's Valium. It's a 10 milligram. Let's have a look at this one. And these are actual containers. And this one says, obviously, Dr. Nikopoulos, Elvis Presley, on the 8th of the 15th, 1977. Well, so not long before he passed. Actually, no. I must have been valid until. I'm not sure about that. The date is confusing me. Can you see that? That's, yeah. Is that right? That can't be right. That's literally the day before he died. I know, I'm a bit confused, but this one is Benadryl. Right. Let's keep looking. It's strange how you can find these things, isn't it? It's like there's a whole load of them. But you can literally buy these containers. It's a bit twisted, to be honest with you. I don't think as an Elvis fan, I wouldn't want to collect his containers that used to hold his medication. I just wouldn't. There's one there. I find that a bit odd. Like, I watched a thing on YouTube the other day where someone had bought the ambulance and the equipment that was used to revive him. And I thought, I can't. For me, I don't like that. Anything that involved his death, reviving him, or the ambulance. I don't know. I don't see that as something to collect. What are your views, guys? Is it the Spa guy? Who obviously his videos are great, aren't they? The Spa guy, but some of the topics I'm talking about death here, like. Don't know. But saying that, I'm talking about prescribed medication and pills. So am I being a hypocrite? Let's just keep looking. Just going to read a few more clips about Elvis. So this one's quite a blunt write-up. Was Elvis a drug addict? Yeah? You need a what? Okay, in a minute. I'm nearly finished now. Let's see if we can get this to... Famously... let's have a look here. Was Elvis a drug addict? What was Presley's addicted to? What drugs did Elvis use before his death? How to connect with addiction in California? So let's have a look here. Priscilla emphasized in a book that since all the drugs Elvis took were prescribed, he did not see them as harmful in any way. And I keep reading about this over and over again. Elvis thought it was fine. Priscilla highlighted that the distinction significantly influenced his perception of, and I get that. Beyond this, it was revealed that Elvis had actively worked to combat the war on drugs. And I know about this with the Nixon visit. across the United States. This led him to believe that he was somehow exempt from falling into the trap of addiction, causing him to scoff at any suggestion of an Elvis Presley drug problem. And isn't there famous footage of Elvis in concert in Vegas, basically saying to everyone, don't accuse me of being strung out and a druggie? And I think you can actually find this on YouTube. And because Elvis really did take offense if he was sort of made out to be some kind of drug addict. On August 16th, 1977, the lifeless body of Elvis Presley was discovered. Initially, his physician insisted that the Origins medical examiner asserted that drugs played no part. Right, we've read this. Right, then it just goes through all the pills that we've already said. Let's have a look. Let's see. I just want to try and find a section that... No, they're all saying the same thing. So I'm sort of coming to the end of this live stream now. So, all right, let's skip that. That's the postman. All right, come on, let's let the postman in. All right, come on then. Right, sorry guys, we just had a delivery.
What is it?
I'm going to use this as an excuse to warm my tea. It's something for Mummy. Right, let's warm my tea.
Are you hungry?
Yeah, I'm going to make you something now.
Can I get you a snack?
Yes, I can get you a snack.
Now.
Right then, so I'm going to bring this to an end now. And so I'm just trying to, with you guys, sort of try and understand, because street drugs, making himself feel like it was okay. And then you get further down the road where no one could speak to him because he was in denial and he wouldn't accept that he had a problem, even though it affected how he looked, his weight, and he was slurring. And I think definitely played a big part on why him and Priscilla had problems. And Linda Thompson and Ginger Alden have both clearly said that the medication that he was taking had clearly changed him and clearly was making him unwell, and he just wouldn't take their advice, especially Linda Thompson. Linda Thompson thought that Elvis was going to die while he was asleep, and so did Ginger Alden, and they would worry that because Elvis liked to go up to his room and he would eat late at night, and many times Elvis would fall asleep with food still stuck in his mouth, and they would have to get it out, and they were worried about him choking, so that his girlfriends were like on night watch to keep him alive. And it just got so serious that he had been revived many times by all different people, not just the girlfriends. You've got this story from Larry Geller, who says that he saw Elvis's head being dipped into water once. They were trying to wake him up so they could get him on stage. And then you've got Larry Geller saying that he'd had an argument with Colonel Tom Parker, and Colonel Tom Parker was saying, no matter what happens, get that man on stage. That's all that matters. So there's very strong issues here. In the end, he had become so unwell. I think many knew that he didn't have long left, but he was still being pushed onto that stage to perform. And we know that these last few performances in 77 were very emotional, and he still had a great voice. But obviously he looked very unwell. You had to feel sorry for him. And he really did put on a brave face and try and put on his best show because he loved his fans and he wanted to be there for his fans. And obviously he loved performing. And you listen to those songs in those last few concerts that I watch them on YouTube, etc. And they are so touching and emotional and beautiful. But that man, the Elvis that we all grew to love through the 50s, through the 60s and 70s, had gone. He had gone. He was buried. He was completely smothered, and you had tiny sparks of Elvis trying to come through. And it is like he had given up. It is like he had lost his passion, and the fun, the charming Elvis, the full of energy and vibrant, had gone, I think, late 76, 77. That wasn't Elvis. That was an over-medicated, very unwell person that still had this beautiful talent, And Elvis was one of the most energetic people you could ever meet. And when you watch him through the 50s and 60s and early 70s, that man is on fire. He's on fire. He's amazing. He's like, you can't take your eyes off him. And he was a very smart man. And I've done a whole loads of videos on how generous and charitable he was and how kind he was. But it doesn't matter because ultimately, and I don't like to admit this, he was slowly killing himself. And he died way too young. There's no way that Elvis should have died at the age of 42. It's a crime against humanity because that man was going to do so much good for the world. And I'm not just talking about his music. Elvis was one of the kindest, most generous people, if not the most, that I have ever known as a celebrity. And I think he was going to go on to do many, many good things for the world. And I think he would have saved millions of lives. That's how good Elvis was. He really was a decent, kind, obviously Christian, good-hearted man that wanted to do good. He didn't want his talent just for himself and his ego. No, he wanted to share everything, and he really cared about the world. He cared about America so much. And Memphis Mafia, it might have been, it wasn't Red West, Sonny West, I think, said it. So the drugs took it away. He had the world at his feet, and the drugs took it away. And what do you guys think? Yeah. K&S, hiya. How we go? I'm just going to get my cup of tea a minute. I'm coming back. All right, let's get my tea. Right. Hold on. I'm just going to warm it up a second. Right, I'm back. Let's get my tea. Sorry, guys. Okay. Good morning to K&S. How are you today? So it's a bit of a difficult topic because I don't want people to think that I'm doing a live stream about Elvis's medicated, prescribed pills, drugs to trash Elvis. I'm not. The whole point of this live stream is to involve the subscribers and to involve the fans and just say what is your opinion on why Elvis got so heavily into the drugs. I know many of you think it's because he was very unwell. I also know many of you think that because he was so unwell, it was okay for all the different medications he took. So I'm not trying to be negative about Elvis. I love Elvis. I'm just trying to understand why. Why did it all go so wrong with the pill taking? So Elvis took the pill due to intense fear of insomnia. Yeah, I'm good. I'm good, KNS. Is your name KS? Is that your something short something? Yeah, I know about the insomnia. I know that he had a fear that he was never going to wake up again, and then he would take the tablets to go to sleep. Then he would wake up. He was too groggy, so he would take more tablets to wake up, and it was a vicious circle. Vicious circle. So I actually think that when Elvis first started taking the pills, in like in the 50s and in the army, that it was completely harmless. To be honest with you, I don't think Elvis. I think the 1977 Elvis would have told off. No, sorry, the other way around. The Elvis taking pills in 1958 would have told the 1977 Elvis off and said, "What are you doing?" That is how different things have become between the two. Oh, hi, Kim. Yeah. So have you seen my videos on my diet, how I lost weight, Kim? Did you watch those? I've posted a couple now. Yes. Yeah, I know he had a twisted colon, but probably other issues to do with his colon. And because I had a bad case of ulcerative colitis, which I cured by changing my diet to fatty meat and eggs and getting rid of sugar and carbs, and I fixed myself. But it also made me lose loads of weight. The minute I stopped the pasta, the bread, the sugars, the starchy carbs, the fizzy drinks, the alcohol, as soon as I stopped all those things and I massively increased my diet to fatty meat and eggs, salt, butter, that kind of food, fish, omelets, I did lose a lot of weight and I cured myself. So that diet has really helped me. That's why I've said to people on this channel, because it transformed my life. So yeah, if you look at some of my live, I have. Yeah, come and have a sit down.
Can I see your tummy?
Yeah, oh, not now. Come sit here. Come sit. Right. So I've only done a few of these videos, just explaining my diet and how I helped get rid of my pre-diabetes. Because if I'd carried on eating the way I was going to become type 2 diabetes. So, and they're in my live stream, I think. I think I've only done 2. And these, changing how I eat, made me lose loads of weight, made me cure all my problems, got rid of my pre-diabetes. So I do, I advocate. A lot of people call this diet a keto diet. So, so mainly meat and eggs and fish, and then just a little bit of salad, a little bit of fruit, and some nuts. And that has cured me. And if I have a tea, I don't use sugar. What's good for you when you eat? What's good for you, Tino? Tell the people out there, what should you be? Apples, oranges, and bananas. What, anything else? What does Daddy eat?
Chocolate.
Chocolate? I don't even like chocolate. I don't even like chocolate. I don't eat chocolate. All sweets. Do you eat chocolate?
No.
Tino is 4. He just had his birthday. So anyway, back to the Elvis thing. So as I was saying, I'm just trying to understand the whole thing. Yeah. And yeah, my name's Louis. Nice to meet you. And I was born in England, near Bristol, in a holiday town called Weston-super-Mare. But both my parents are from Cyprus, and they came over to London in the 1960s when the Beatles were taking over the world, and they would go and watch the Beatles movies and Elvis movies in London, and that's how they courted. And so, no, it's Tino, but he does have an uncle called Gino, and their mother is quarter Italian, so that's why they've got these names. So you are from Australia? Yes, we definitely have spoke before, haven't we? And I said to you before, I want to go to Australia. And do you watch Neighbours? They're making Neighbours again, aren't they? Is that correct? Sicilian, wow, yeah. See, look, Italian like you. He's got 1/8 Italian. He's 50%, 50% Greek Cypriot, and the rest is English. And so that's that. So, do any of you have views out there on why you think Elvis went down that road with the pills and it became so bad? Please give me your views. I'd like to know. Yeah, I don't watch Neighbours, but I did in the 80s. So when Kylie Minogue and Jason Donovan were the big stars, in England they would run Neighbours every afternoon at 2:30. And I had a girlfriend back then. I was only 16 or 17 years old, and we would just, and I wasn't working for a while, and she was home a lot, so we would just sit there every afternoon and watch this half-hour episode of Neighbours that was on every day. And so that stuck in my head, and because of it I've always loved Australia, because I've always felt Australia looked amazing. The lifestyle looks fantastic because of obviously the big waves and all the surfing and the lovely weather you guys get over there. But I also like the films from like, what's the film? Oh, what's it called again? Where the father burns the Volkswagen Beetle in the sand in the desert, and they're in the outback. And then you have the two kids, so the little girl and their little son are then trying to find their way back home. It's a classic film from the early 70s. Oh, what's it called? I completely forgot. It's just out of my head. Such a brilliant film. Love that film. And I like the early Mel Gibbs films as well. You know, Mel Gibbs, you know, where he plays a boy that is not that intelligent and he has an affair with an older woman. That film is so good. Again, I can't remember the name of it. Is it Ben? I just can't remember. I love those old 1970s, 1980s outback Australian films. I love them. Love them. One of my favourite. So anyway, guys, I think I'm going to go now. We've been on for nearly an hour, just waffling. Yes, Tim. Brilliant film. And the woman that he had an affair with, the elder woman, I forget her name, but she was a very, very famous Hollywood starlet, I think. Obviously in her older years. Yeah, I love Mel Gibson. Even now, I know that he's much older and he's had lots of problems with alcohol, but I love Mel Gibson. Absolutely loves him. Mel Gibson. Love him. One of my favourite actors. In fact, I like a lot of the Australian actors. And it's interesting that Riley Keough has based herself in Australia with her stuntman husband. And I think they've got an adopted child, haven't they? Why do I think Elvis had a drug problem? I think there was recreational pills being taken in the 50s for, to go out and party. I think then when he joined the army and was drafted into the army, that they were taking these tablets to keep them going on maneuvers. And I think some people in the 50s called them diet tablets and knew they would get you high. And so they were popping these little pills to keep them going through the army years. And I think that just carried on. I think that Elvis just saw that these pills were a way of staying awake, a way of putting himself to sleep, and sometimes a way of partying. So that is why I think. And then I just think Elvis had convinced himself that these tablets were not, didn't have side effects and were not going to make him unwell. And because they were prescribed, I think Elvis thought, well, because they're prescribed, they're okay. And I think this mindset just carried on and got more serious and more serious. But we know that Elvis had a lot of issues with, he couldn't understand why he has been given all this success and this talent and the good looks, and why he had become the most famous man in the world. It was just so much for him, so much of a pressure. And I think that Elvis at first loved the fame, absolutely loved the fame, loved being famous, loved his fans. But I think eventually he felt guilty about his fame and wanted to understand why he was famous, and seriously was trying to understand and ask himself questions. Why me? Why me? And in the end, the why me became too much. I really believe that. And so with Priscilla, I know about the book Child Bride. I'm not sure if I believe it, because obviously there's a whole story coming out now that Priscilla had pre-planned meeting Elvis in Germany when she was 14, and had been seeing other men before she met Elvis, and put herself across as being innocent. I don't know if that's true, but I know about that book. I actually think that Elvis in Germany was very lonely. So when he met this stunning young girl in Germany that was American, and they had a good chemistry and got on very well, and he had someone to talk about his mother to. Obviously, his mother had only been passed for about 10, 11 months when he met Priscilla, and he really confided in Priscilla in Germany, and I think that he trusted her, and I think he did see his future with Priscilla. But don't forget, when Elvis was in the army, he felt he was going to be forgotten. He was very insecure about his career's future. So whether it be making movies or singing, if he'd be forgotten. And I think Priscilla got to see the real Elvis, the real true Elvis, the before fame Elvis. I know Elvis in 58 and 59, had had massive success and had made 2 movies or 3 movies, is it? But I think the Elvis she met in Germany had become like a little boy again and was very insecure and almost forgot how successful he was. And I think that little period where they bonded was very special to Elvis. But then Elvis comes out of the army, does the Frank Sinatra Coming Home special, makes GI Blues, makes 2 albums with RCA Victor, and suddenly was, boom, back into this massive successful life again. GI Blues is a phenomenal success. And then obviously he had other girlfriends in the early 60s, and Priscilla eventually, with her persistence and her letter writing, eventually comes over to America. You know, we all know that story. And I do think that the early Priscilla, the early years, did love Elvis, and Elvis did love her. I do think that when she could see that Elvis had problems and was being very unfaithful, and from her point of view was a controlling type of person and liked his women to be old-fashioned, at home, looking after the man, I think once Priscilla got it in her head that one day she was going to leave Elvis, so after they got married, I would say, I think Priscilla had her eye on the money. And this is my thoughts on Priscilla. Now, I know that she has helped keep his legacy alive. She helped keep Graceland's going, but other people have as well. And the biggest person who kept Elvis Presley's legacy alive was Elvis. His talent, his looks, his charm, how he affected the world. Elvis has kept his legacy alive, not Priscilla. Yeah. So my views on Priscilla is this: she's made many mistakes. When she went for his money, she went way too far, wanted way too much. And I'm very upset that Priscilla tried to sue, had legal wrangles with Riley Keough over Lisa Marie's will, and Lisa Marie changing things. So I don't hate Priscilla, but I do think she's made a lot of mistakes. And there's many things Priscilla has done to Elvis that I disagree with. But I will say this: Elvis should have been faithful, 100%. If you marry a woman, even under duress, where it was pushed on him by the Colonel and Vernon, and some people say he was even blackmailed into marrying Elvis. I get all that. But you marry a woman, you have a woman's child, you are a faithful person. I have been with my wife for 19 years. I am faithful, and nothing will change that. And even if we're going through a bad patch and arguing, which we do, I'm still going to be faithful. So Elvis's biggest mistake in life, I think, and I actually think Elvis regrets it, is when he had girlfriends, he should have been faithful. I believe that. Do you think that? Do you think Elvis should have been faithful? And not just to Priscilla, to Linda Thompson, to Ginger Oldham, and to all the other girlfriends that he had. What do you think? Anyone out there? Do you think Elvis should have been faithful? I'm interested to know your views. So I actually think, this is again my views, I actually think an older Elvis, say in 1977, yeah, I think Elvis, looking back on his life, wished he was faithful. I really do. Because if you look at the Elvis that was brought up in Mississippi, Tupelo, in Sotillo Road, in that first house that Vernon and his uncle built together. No, I know Priscilla cheated. I know it. And more than once, and I am disgusted by the different affairs that Priscilla had, even before they got married and just after. I completely know that. Priscilla is completely out of order as well. Please don't think that I'm on her side when it comes to unfaithfulness. But two wrongs don't make a right. So if Priscilla was unfaithful, which she was, yeah, that you got the dance instructor as well as Mike Stone and other people, that doesn't mean it was okay for Elvis. I'm an old-fashioned guy. I grew up mainly in the 70s, and you are faithful in your relationships if you're a decent person, honestly. And I've been unfaithful before when I was in my teenage years and in my 20s, and I regret it. I regret being unfaithful when I was in my 20s. Yeah, so it's not right. Yeah. If you want to move on to a different woman or a different man, you split up from them. You do it honorably. You do it properly. I really believe that. So, look, Elvis from Mississippi, Tupelo, Sotillo Road, in that humble beginning where they were very poor and they really knew how to struggle, and they were church-going Christians that went to church together and had really good morals. And Elvis loved joining in at church and gospel singing, and grew up around very humble people. And we know that Elvis grew up in and around the black community of Tupelo, and they helped him. The black community used to bring Elvis fruit and vegetables because they knew that Gladys and Vernon didn't have any money, so they helped Elvis. Elvis really knew what it felt like to struggle and be poor, and that good Christian Elvis was a decent man, and even in his young teenage years, I think wanted to marry and have a young family young. Yeah, but what happened, and obviously he lived by the Christian book, the Bible, and I really believe Elvis, if he had not had this beautiful voice and beautiful looks, was going to have a really good job, was going to be a hardworking man, a loyal husband, and a great father. And I think he was going to have a big family, but it wasn't meant to be because fate said, no, you're going to change the world. And I think once Elvis went down the road of changing the world in the way that he did, temptation jumps in the middle and he's unfaithful and he's doing loads of things that the young Elvis would never have done. And it is partially drug induced, but temptation is so strong. What do you do when you've got the best, most beautiful looking women throwing themselves at you? Even though you've got a wife at home or a child at home or a girlfriend, Elvis just couldn't resist it. He was a human being. He was a man. And he gave into these temptations. And I think the 1977 Elvis didn't like the way he had lived his life for the last 3 or 4 years of his life. I actually think Elvis wished he had been faithful to his partners. And I think Elvis regretted splitting up from Linda Thompson. And because she was a beautiful woman, a very loyal, trustworthy, decent woman, Linda Thompson. And I think that was part of the reason Elvis struggled. He regretted splitting up from Linda Thompson. And so I do think Elvis, before he passed, lived with a lot of regrets. Anyway, let's just cheated only with Mike Stone. There were more. Yeah, no, there were more. There was a dance instructor that I forget his name, that she called in her, I think in her book, she called him Dave, but that wasn't his real name. I actually found his real name. Let me see if I can find it. Was it Steve? Let's have a look. Let's see if I can. Let's have a look. I'll just type it in, see what comes up, guys. Who did Priscilla cheat with? Right. So obviously, we all know about Mike Stone, and even that, she's so out of order because he was married and she was pregnant. You know, Mike Stone's wife. Right. Who did Priscilla cheat with? Let's see what comes up. We'll learn together, guys. Right. Despite renewing vows in Hawaii, she continued to experience the limitations of her marriage. My life was his life. She said to People magazine in 1978, my problems were secondary. She had an affair with Mike Stone. Okay, let's see if it says about the other guy. It says here, let's have a look what comes up here. Right. Priscilla seems almost... No, let's have a look. I don't know if it's going to say his name. It could have been, it could have been Stuart or Steve. No, I don't think it's going to say it. Let's have a look at this bit here. Except, sorry guys, I'm just trying to. Let's have a look. Priscilla. No, it's not saying his name. But I have read about 3 different people that she had affairs with, and 1 after the marriage, 2 before. See, we're never going to know the truth. I honestly thought Priscilla cheated only with Mike Stone. Yeah, and Ginger Alden. Well, as far as she was, from what I know, she was faithful. Are you asking my opinion on her? Yeah, so she's obviously beautiful and lovely, and she went on to have a very full life and got married after Elvis. And many people say that they wish that she hadn't fallen asleep the night that he died. She talks, there's many videos, and she talks in interviews about how he proposed to her and how they were going to get married Christmas. Now, I've watched so many different interviews on Ginger Alden that some people say that they never actually did get engaged, and that he just bought her a ring, and that he didn't get down on one knee. I think there's a good chance they probably did get engaged. You can find the ring online. It was in a green velvet box. Now, do I think Elvis was going to ever marry Ginger Alden? It's a difficult one. Maybe. I think he was very unwell in that last year. I know that Ginger Alden, in her interviews, does say that he had started to lose weight, getting ready for the up and coming concerts, live tour, and that he was upbeat and looking forward to it, and she went on holiday with him, and that he was fine. So Ginger Alden does say that a few months before he passed, that he wasn't this very unwell, really fat, drugged up man, that he was actually getting much better and excited for the years ahead. So obviously we see the footage of Elvis in concert and he looks so unwell. So we can't imagine that from that concert to weeks before he passed, that he had lost weight and got much better and was looking forward to the live concert coming up. So, and silly. Some people say suicide. No way do I think Elvis committed suicide. I believe that the concoction of all the different medications and his very serious illnesses that he had all mixed together. And don't forget, he went to the dentist the night before, so there was problems there with him being given painkillers, and I think he woke up and took more painkillers at least 2 more times the night. We know about that he played racquetball with Billy Smith, and but that shows you that he was quite upbeat. Because why would you wake up Billy Smith and play racquetball if you're too overweight and too unwell? It doesn't add up. So it does tell me that I do believe that he had started losing weight, ready for the up and coming concert. So, and it also does show me that he was a bit upbeat as well on the night before he died. So it's a touching story about him passing. So, and you've got Lisa Marie, he kissed her goodnight and that, it's very sad. So that's it, guys. If any of you want to ask me any questions, please go ahead. And I just say this because I know that the topic of this live stream is quite a touchy topic. I am not trying to diss Elvis. I just want to give an open, broad view of Elvis and try and understand Elvis and understand his life and how he thought, what made him tick. And this subject is me just doing that. What was the name of the co-star who was in love? Well, there's more than one, but obviously Anne Margaret from, is it Viva Las Vegas? Anne Margaret was lovely, and she was such a loyal girlfriend of his because she never dissed Elvis. She never said anything bad about Elvis, and she kept most of their intimate details to herself. And so for me, Anne Margaret has been very decent. She didn't go off and write loads of books and all that. She's never done that, Anne Margaret. So she gets my respect. But do I think Anne Margaret and Elvis could have ever got married? No, and I'll tell you why. Because Anne Margaret was the female Elvis. So she was very career-minded, ambitious. She was a great singer. We know she went on to have a big career in Las Vegas and make more movies. But Elvis didn't want a career-minded, super famous woman as his partner. He wanted someone at home to look after the home, look after the kids. So I think there was a lot of infatuation with Anne Margaret and Elvis. I do think Elvis probably did love Anne Margaret, but was she ever going to be his wife? Nah, I don't think so. Yeah, I think they were in love. I do think that. But Elvis was fickle. He would move on to the next person and he would fall in love again. He would. And because I think Elvis loved Linda Thompson as well. And then you've got that woman, I can't remember her name. Is it Susan? I can't remember her name. The one off the 68 comeback. They were very close. They were very, very close for a while. Yeah. You got really clear colour footage of them canoodling and kissing. I forget her name. I did a video on her. Let's have a look. Just seeing. I do so many videos. I actually find them hard to find myself. So what was her name? There's just too many videos. Oh no, I just called it The Affair. Let's have a look. Let me just play it. Oops, and she seems sweet, but at the end of the day, she had an affair with him whilst he was married to Priscilla, and I don't agree with that. Susan Hennings. And this is the video. Susan Hennings. But she seems like a lovely lady, but the bottom line is she had an affair with Elvis whilst he was married. She shouldn't do that. I don't agree with it. It's morally, that is wrong to me. Yeah, and they had a child, didn't they? So, sorry, Susan, you don't get my vote. So I did post a video today called Elvis Presley, Why Did He Take Drugs? And the reason I've titled it in that way, because I want you guys to tell me why you think he took drugs. So that's that. Okay, guys, I think we've said enough. And I've been on way too long. So I know I've waffled a lot. Yes, I know. And I've just done a video on Benjamin, her son Benjamin, which I found quite difficult to make because he just seemed like a lovely person. And to die at 27, 27, so young, Elvis's only grandson. Yeah, look forward to seeing you. All the best to you. I'm going to say goodbye to the people watching. Thanks, guys. Any of you that watch, I know
Bye-bye.
many of you watch this when you wake up.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Many of you watch this when you wake up.
Bye.
So,
Bye.
good morning
Bye.
to you. Say bye. Say goodbye, Tina.
Goodbye, Tina.
Say bye. Say bye.
Bye.
See you guys. Keep